Hello and welcome to Bird Barrier Live Training. My name is Michael Gallion, and today we're going to talk about StealthNet. To be able to net off an area where birds are creating problems is really important to be able to offer a complete bird control program. There are many people who do a lot of bird control without getting into some of the larger StealthNet jobs. However, it's important for you to carry certification to know and understand what netting is all about. We call it StealthNet because, true to many things about bird control, the customer doesn't really want to see the actual deterrent system as much as possible. What we're doing is we're intruding on the original architecture of a structure. The reason why we net in the first place is to remove all the high pressure nesting sites. We generally are not going to net off unless birds have infested a structure to the point where it warrants this type of investment of the actual materials and the labor that's involved in StealthNet. Most people become intimidated by StealthNet in the beginning, but after they do their first project, they realize it's relatively simple in its concept and its approach. In this case that we're going to use to show you to learn how to do StealthNet from, this particular HVAC system on a rooftop had areas where birds were nesting and infesting the area, and those are circled. Those are the areas that nesting was occurring. As with any high pressure nesting site, you're going to see medium pressure staging areas. These are the areas the birds use to go in and out of their nesting areas as an intermediate place to make sure there aren't predators in the area and safely go to and from their nesting areas. We don't just solve nesting alone without considering the staging areas. In the same way, we don't just solve staging areas expecting nesting to cease just because we deal with the staging areas. We want to cover everything and prevent birds' complete access to the area. The solution is fairly simple. You're building walls that the birds cannot get through. The walls are constructed of netting, which is the least expensive material to cover large open areas like this. So the yellow lines that you see throughout this image are where all the cables were installed that the net gets supported to. We'll talk more in detail about the construction of nets. Remember, it's high pressure, food and water, nesting features. These are the things that cause the high pressure. Another factor in the pressure that comes into play is where are the birds going to go? Do they have easy access to move freely and survive elsewhere in the general area? And then how many generations have been living? If you're going into a site like this and it's only been infested for about a year, the pressure is going to be much easier to solve if it's something compared to a 10-year infestation where the birds have been conditioned over many generations that this is their only place of survival. Overhead protection is that feature you want to pay attention to. And as we saw in the circled areas, all those areas had high pressure overhead protection. This is what the bird uses to get out of the elements. Generally on rooftops, there aren't humans. They very rarely come up there unless there's a problem or there's some minor maintenance. And then from there, medium pressure will become evident. Even if you don't go up and inspect the roof, you start to see medium pressure like this surrounding the building. You know that there's some kind of nesting component that you're going to have to deal with. The medium pressure areas where there were a lot of droppings were on top of these high perch areas that surrounded the structure. Low pressure is generally easy to solve, and we just use medium pressure deterrents to solve this sort of situation. Remember, if you're going to lean on us for your strategy, which is a big part of our services that we offer, we have a complete support system of several employees here that will help you to strategize and put together a proposal for your project. In order for us to really help you, you have to complete this checklist before you come to us, and that is pressure level, confirming nesting, where the birds are nesting, what type of birds are nesting, good photos, measurements, and any other special requests that we're not aware of that the customer might have mentioned, like in the case of this photo where it was a historic building that could not be drilled into. So those are the sort of special request things that we need to know about. Remember, when you document the photos, when you're taking your photos, it's not just overview photos. We need up close photos of the bird droppings, their nesting sites, along with the medium and wide shots. We also want to make sure if you're treating an area lower on the building, you still have to inspect the roof. Don't assume there's not nesting going on the roof. And if at all possible, include the Google address so that we can look at the satellite images and get a better view, 3D, all the way around the situation and have even better strategy. So let's talk about StealthNet and the construction itself, the components that make up a StealthNet. The most important connection when you start to build a net is the corner. The corner is going to bear a lot of the weight and the pull of the tension of all of the cable that's being pulled onto the net. So the corner, that corner structure we see is an eye bolt that's been screwed in deep into the structure. That's got to hold the net up completely. Next, the turnbuckle is used to not only connect the cable to the corner, but to have the ability to adjust the tension so that the net looks nice and clean and even, and it has a lot of strength to hold up to the elements. The way that we connect the cable itself to the corners or to the turnbuckles is using a crimp ferrule system. That's the copper colored ferrules that you see that get crimped using a special tool. And then the cable itself is the perimeter, and that is the real support structure. This is what the cable actually gets connected to using hog rings. And then intermediates are used roughly about every 18 inches. This is so that you don't get so much slack around the cable that the bird can go around the net, squeeze in between the perimeter. It's important to check the tension along the intermediates. So ultimately, the only two things that are in contact with the building is the corner connector and the intermediates. Everything else is connected to the cable support system that surrounds the perimeter. There are different size nets, 2 inch, 1 1/8, 3/4. There's all kinds of sizes in between. But basically those sizes are used to screen out birds of different sizes. You just have to keep in mind that 3/4 inch netting is the best to use for all birds because no bird can get through a 3/4 inch net. The reason we have 2 inch and some of the larger sizes on massive projects, it costs less money to use less material, of course. 2 inch netting uses less material than 3/4 inch netting. Also, there are different colors available. If it were my preference, we wouldn't even show you the stone netting, and the reason why is that the black StealthNet has a 10-year warranty on it. Any other color does not have a warranty. Now, there are some times where I understand the customer thinks that stone is going to blend it a little better, but the truth is black is more stealth, more StealthNet, right? In terms of how it works, in the shadows, mostly there's not direct lighting on it, and therefore black is the most disguised netting that you can actually use. But most importantly, you can offer a 10-year warranty on the black StealthNet. Here are some of the examples of the sizes of birds based on the openings. So pigeons, which is, accounts for most of the netting jobs, you can go up to 2 inch without a problem. Now, keep in mind, when we say 2 inch, 2 inch opening, that's any opening that you're blocking off. Sometimes a beautiful net will go in, but there will be larger gaps than 2 inches in different areas beyond the net. Well, that defeats the whole purpose. You have to make sure that you understand any gap larger than 2 inch, the bird can get through. Or in the case of like sparrows, 3/4 inches. We may think that a 1 inch gap is enough, but in reality, sparrows are known to get through a lot of small areas. Let's look at some of the sample projects of where StealthNet has been used. Open ceilings is the most common place. All the vast openings that are available up above that we see create a lot of nesting situations. Hangars, airport hangars, that's another very important part of bird control. Now, I want you to look closely at this particular net because there's something that you want to always keep in mind. Notice right here below the ceiling where this yellow line is, how low down the net is actually going. The reason we're going down that far below the ceiling is to cover the support steel beams, those cross beams that are supporting. They have small metal flanges and birds will still land and nest up high. So the concept of open ceilings is that you want to go to the lowest point where birds are going to possibly nest up in that ceiling. We got to get rid of all those spots. Outdoor dining is another possibility. If we take a look at the next slide here, this is what it looks like when you're looking through StealthNet. Of course, we don't want to see anything like this. This is not a certified install. Duct tape, zip tie, whatever it is, this, cheap materials are not going to last. And birds usually breach right through this as soon as you put it up, and it's all a big waste of time. Beam supports sometimes require special attachments. We're going to get into that with the video coming up, as well as certain other techniques for how to net things off. A while back there was white netting was one of the options, but the white netting would fade and eventually it would fall apart much sooner and would only last about 3 years. But this is an example of a loading dock that was used. Sometimes on the roof itself you have to build the structure to attach to, because we generally want to raise that net up off the roof deck so that maintenance crew can get up in there and service all of the devices that are up above there. Here's an example where we do what's called a box net. Sometimes you have an isolated area that you just want to net off, and by excluding out any chance of a bird getting in there, that will solve that. There are magnetic intermediates and corner connectors. These can really save you a lot of time. Remember, it's all about labor when it comes to StealthNet, not about the materials. Sometimes you want to spend a little more money on the materials to save a lot of labor. By having magnetic connectors, we don't have to spend hours drilling the hardware into the steel, which is a lot harder than most people think. Sometimes when there are multiple surfaces on a building, it's best just to net out the whole structure, especially in one big covering like we see here. Even though we're taking photos and we're trying to really enhance the ability for you to see what the net looks like, in general most people wouldn't even know this is netted until they got right up on it. And from the architectural viewpoint, it still looks really nice as it was originally intended. And of course, this is an example of the shadowed areas, black StealthNet all underneath at a Major League Baseball stadium, and you can't even see the net unless you get up on it, but it holds for a very long time. Some of the best organizations in the world will spec out that they use StealthNet to make sure they get the premium quality and the long life of the net that they want. Here's an example of something you can turn to bird barrier to when you face unique situations. That this rib feature of the walls here, that sheet metal, the way it's designed, you could not get the net all the way against the wall. There would be too many gaps. By drilling through right at the back part of the wall, you can see you could just thread the cable through an area like that and wrap your net around those protrusions that stick out and solve the whole problem. There are a lot of tricks like that we can help you with. So make sure you get nice detailed photos up close of the areas so that we can see exactly what's going on. We also have some custom parts and devices to make netting much easier. Here's an example where rather than put up poles and net off the whole roof, if you just isolate each unit where the birds were nesting, we can do the corner cast-offs and build a net that sits to the deck of the roof using weighted tubing or chain that holds it in place, that can be easily lifted for access for maintenance underneath. Here we see the nation's capital even has StealthNet on it. A few years back, they needed to do a full restoration. If you lived in the area or visited in the last 5 years, there was full scaffolding around the entire Capitol building. But as we can see here, StealthNet was used to get rid of all the pigeons that were nesting and all of the ornate features. Very careful consideration had to be done for how it was attached. and this was a very good project in the end. They were very happy with the results. Even though the StealthNet is warranted for 10 years, they designed the hardware so that the net could be replaced every 10 years, leaving the hardware in place. Let's take a look now. We're going to play a video coming up here of how to do proper install for StealthNet certification.
There are 7 elements to every StealthNet installation. Corner attachments are the most important part of the system. They are where the cable starts, finishes, or turns corners. They need to be very strong. Intermediate attachments are placed every 2 to 3 feet and keep the cable close to the wall. Any gaps between the cable and the wall can allow birds to re-enter. Cable creates the framework around the net system. The netting is attached directly to the cable using net rings. Ferrules are sleeves that are crimped onto the cable to make a loop. A loop is required at both ends of every cable. Turnbuckles tighten the cable. The netting is the material that blocks the birds from the area. Only 2 of the parts attach directly to the structure, the corner attachments and the intermediate attachments. Start by sliding 2 ferrules onto the cable. Loop the cable through the corner attachment and then back through the ferrules. Make the loop as small as possible and leave only a short tail extending out past the ferrules. The correct use of the ratchet crimper is crucial for a strong loop. Insert the ferrule into the tool, making sure it stands upright and is over to one end. The ferrule needs to be crimped twice. Squeeze the tool all the way until it releases, move it over, and crimp again. Repeat the process on the other ferrule. The ferrules should be right next to each other if possible. Now the cable is threaded through the intermediate attachments and pulled tight by hand. One cable should be installed on each straight side of the project, as it is hard to get tight cables when it is forced to turn corners. Next, the turnbuckle can be installed. Open the turnbuckle all the way, otherwise it may be difficult to get the cable as tight as necessary. Hook the turnbuckle to the corner attachment. Thread the cable through the 2 ferrules and then through the loop in the turnbuckle. Pull the cable tight by hand. Crimp the ferrules as shown earlier. And finally, cut the cable using the cable cutters. Turn the turnbuckle by hand. This pulls the hook and the eye together and tightens the cable. Use a screwdriver for extra tension if necessary. The cable should be so tight that it is hard to push it down to the building surface. Turnbuckles are available in both galvanized and stainless steel, and in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. Use small turnbuckles for cable lengths less than 25 feet, medium for 25 to 75 feet, and large turnbuckles for lengths in excess of 75 feet. This process should be repeated on all 4 sides. The net ring tool can now be used to attach the netting to the cable system. It produces a small metal loop that wraps around the cable and the netting. Net rings are available in galvanized or stainless steel. It is advisable to start in a corner. Remember, the net tag is on the long side of the net, so you will know which direction to attach without having to unbundle the whole net. Slip the netting into the end of the tool, extend it up to the corner attachment, and squeeze the tool. Check to make sure the ring secured the net and the hardware. Now, simply move down the line attaching the net to the cable. Attach every square when using 2-inch net. It is acceptable to skip every other square on 3/4-inch net. Before heading down the length of the cable, attach a foot or 2 of the netting to the other cable. Back on the first cable, continue net looping. At each intermediate attachment, make sure the netting is not pulled too tightly. Once you pass this point, the net tension is locked. Continue on until the next corner attachment is reached. Secure the netting to that as well. Return to the starting end and attach the end line to the cable. This is the last square of the net, so it is not possible to make adjustments if the other end is attached first. Attach the netting until the corner attachment is reached. At this corner, it is important to attach a net line that runs perpendicular to the first line. And it's very important to decide which line to use. Pull a line towards the cable. If it is fairly hard to pull to the cable, move to the next line until it reaches the cable easily. At this point, either remaining sides can be attached as there is ample netting to trim off. We'll move across the bottom, then down the last side. Attach the last corner to the remaining corner attachment and the job is complete. The last step is to trim off the extra net. On this small display, it can all be trimmed at once, but when working on a larger job, it's advisable to trim the net before moving along to the next section. The net should not be cut too close to the knot. Leave as much of a tail as possible in case the knot slides slightly. When the job is complete, all netting lines should be straight, horizontal, and vertical. This is simple on a small opening like this one, but can be challenging on larger, complex projects. Field experience will lead to more attractive installations.
Okay, that concludes the install. Now again, I mentioned earlier, you can go to our YouTube page, Bird Barrier on YouTube, and we have much more detailed video available as well, especially the substrates that you might face. There are all kinds of different materials, construction materials that you're going to face. You need to know how to use different attachments. Of course, all those attachments and everything are available in the free catalog. If you want our parts catalog, we will send that to you. To contact us, you can call 1-800-NO-BIRDS. And again, my name is Michael Gallion. Any of the projects where you have the checklist that we talked about, you can send that to me directly through email and I'll help you. If not, myself, I pass it on to some of the other team members who will put together a plan for how to construct. Another thing that I'm going to mention about StealthNet is this kit that you see in front of me is available to be sent out to pest control companies for them to keep as part of their ongoing training program. As you see here, you're learning virtually, you're watching this particular webcast and learning how to do this type of specialized construction. Well, these tools that you see in front of me can be sent out as a kit, and while we work in real time, we can be watching wherever you are around the world and helping consult and make sure we watch how you're doing the actual construction and make sure everything's up to speed. We find that before, especially before the first project that you get into, whether it's a maintenance crew, whoever is going to be installing a net, it's a good idea to get some practice time in before you go out to the site and get familiar with all these tools. So to order one of these kits for your company, you can contact us and we'll ship that out. And then from then on, the training is free. It comes with that kit. You can log on and register for any of the upcoming classes, and we'll have a special hands-on class for your crew so that you can learn how to do all of this using the actual tools. That covers StealthNet. We will see you at the next module.